Hey everyone, how's everyone's evening doing? Today's episode, we are doing a behind the scenes. This is a show where you get to see other people's projects, you get to hear how they went, and you also get to hear you get to see them run their numbers. They're going to tell us the problems they've encountered, how they solved them, and if it's a new problem that they've had, what they've learned from it. So I think this is always a fun topic to talk about with people and just hear about other people's projects and learn from their projects and any mistakes that they make. So just give me a second. I'm going to just add Zorya on here. Hi Zorya. How are you? Can you
Hi.
hear me?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, so it's all good. How have you been?
Good. It's my first Facebook or not Instagram live. So
Oh, is it? Oh, that's
okay.
nice. Yeah, you get to be my first one. It'll be fun. Thanks for coming on. And just before we get started, just give the viewers a little bit about you, who you are, what you do. Just tell the viewers a little bit about yourself.
Sure. Hope I'm not, you can actually see me. I'm sitting in the dark. Yeah, my name is Zorya Belanger. I'm a real estate investor in Edmonton. And my husband and I have been investing for the last 8 years, mostly in the Edmonton area. And we've been focusing on lately brand new multifamily buildings in Edmonton. But yeah, we didn't start like that, but that's what we're doing now. And we have our portfolio of, well, we have 14 doors and we're taking possession of another 20 this year. So that's really exciting.
That's awesome. Congratulations. And so, which project are you going to be talking to us about today?
So I was going to talk about the first new build sixplex that we did. It wasn't our very first new build, but it was the first one that we got commercial financing on. It was first kind of our first multifamily. And so I can talk a bit about that, what it was, because it's not. I know you talk a lot about like different flip projects. This is different. It was just a new build. So hopefully I can let people know how that went. Um, and so yeah, it's was in Edmonton, and I guess do you want me to start, we found it by through our realtors. They already had like a relationship with the builder, so that part was easy. We kind of bought the land and the building from the builder directly, so it wasn't as much work as having to find the lot and then finding a builder and then doing all the zoning and all that. That part was done already. And we were at the point, because we had been wanting to get into multifamily, and when this came up, it was saw it as just a perfect first step into multifamily, because they're actually what they were, like 3 townhouses and each one has a legal secondary suite in it, but all above ground. So you can imagine it's kind of like 3 townhouses in a row, but it's 3 stories high, with 6 units in total. So it technically has 3 titles, but because they're all in one under one roof, I saw it as a perfect opportunity to use commercial financing, because that was a big reason why we were getting into multifamily. We were tapped out with residential mortgages. Even our joint venture partners didn't want to qualify for residential mortgages. It was starting to be a real big pain. Yeah, so this we're with perfect, it's sort of residential, but we can use commercial financing. So it was in that sweet spot. And so yeah, then we basically put a deposit down, and I guess the first part of the process was kind of just working with the builder in the contracts and reviewing the design, because they did have a design for these townhouses, but we my husband and I are both engineers, and so we are very detail orientated, and we had built our own house, and then we had built another rental property. So this was the third new build that we were doing, and we knew what to look for in those drawings. And that was kind of the first, I wouldn't say like a challenge, but the thing like that we did was we did find kind of issues with the design. So luckily, like the builder was very willing to work with us, and we made some changes to it. So one of those,
Sorry to interrupt, I just
yeah,
wanted to get a full scope. So did they do like they were developing, let's say 20 houses, 20 townhouses, or like a division, and you bought these three? Or is that these developers were creating these three and you guys just happened to find it and you just like, I want to take them all?
yeah. Yeah, I guess I'll go back to that. Yeah, so where this was there's a lot of like new communities being built in Edmonton, and so this was a greenfield project in a new neighborhood rather than like an infill project. And so when these communities are being built, the developer like lays out all the lots, and then the builders, these usually bigger builders, come in and they get to select which lots they want. And so the builder already had the lots. They had about like basically the whole block. And we just put the very first three on hold. We were kind of the first ones on that street.
And so when were all the ones that they had, were they, because it sounds like at least the three that you got, they were already, like you said, they had the basement suite design. So were these builders meaning to do investor-friendly townhouses, or did you guys add that in as you just want to have the basement units, or however that secondary unit in there? How did that work?
Yeah, so in that case, like our realtor had done a lot of that work for us, and they had already worked with the builder because they saw that the builder they were building like just these townhouses and giving, homeowners an option to put like an in-law suite in it. So they kind of had a pretty good design, and then the realtors came and they said like, well, this could be a really good investor friendly product if you were just to actually figure out how to legalize it and turn it into an actual legal secondary suite and build a bunch of them together. Then that would be really friendly, investor friendly product. And so I can't take credit for that. That kind of was done. So we came in and like that design was already pretty investor friendly.
Yeah, but that's great to hear that some developers are already thinking of that, because at least here in Ontario, I've never seen a new build with a secondary suite already designed in it. So I think that's really innovative of them to start doing it over there, or at
Yeah.
least that specific builder to start doing that.
Yeah, it seems to be pretty common here. Like I know quite because maybe because it's like secondary suites are pretty common, and they're now in Edmonton you can put one in almost any zoning, can allow a secondary suite. So a lot of it's pretty common for a lot of builders to do.
And just another question, just I'm curious. Are the secondary suites are done in the same year that like the top and the basement is done all together in one, or is it even in the basement?
It's actually the ones that we bought were not in the basement.
Okay, so maybe that's why. Because I was gonna say, like, let's say at least again in Ontario here, usually the reason why basements are unfinished is because they settle, and usually like you don't really want to do anything to them until for a year. So these ones then are above ground, 2 units, duplexes.
Yeah, like you can imagine, it's like a three-story building, and the ground level is the one-bedroom basement secondary suites, and they have their own door, but it's just kind of living like on the ground level. And then there's another door that people go up the stairs and then into their townhouse unit, which is the second and third levels of the building.
Oh, okay. And does it have a basement, or didn't they don't have basements?
These ones do have crawl spaces, which is kind of nice. Like it's still like it's not very high, but it's like 4.5 feet high. You can still get down under, and it's just a storage space. So it is an advantage to the lower suite tenants. They can use that space. Yeah, but there's no basement. But I don't think the reason, but they, even the same builder and other builders, they do build basement suites into properties, and there's a lot of builders that will build like duplexes with basement suites. And so, yeah, ours did have a basement suite was not because of ground settling or anything like that. It was just the design, which I prefer because, yeah, tenants would rather not live in a basement. They'd rather be on the first floor.
100%. Totally agree. That's super interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So like, so yeah, so we had the design, it was in a brand new area. And so then, yeah, then the design process, but we still like made some improvements to the design that we found. I think one of the biggest things was the original design had like a double garage for the one up and down townhouse unit. And so you could either give the garage to the upstairs tenants or the downstairs tenants. And we were like, well, it would be nice if everybody got a garage. So we decided to just split all the garages. So we took, instead of having 3 double garages, we got 6 single garages.
Oh, nice.
So then, and then that made like the downstairs units really unique because there's really unusual to be able to rent a 1-bedroom suite that's not in the basement, that has a garage and is completely like even has a backyard. So we've had no trouble renting those out.
Yeah, that definitely does sound like a diamond in the rough because it's rare to have a basement or a bachelor 1-bedroom have a driveway, let alone a parking space.
Yeah. So even here, like it's uncommon to just basically have a 1-bedroom house with a garage. Like that's like super pretty affordable. Because we're renting these at like 1045 plus 125 for the garage plus utilities.
And so with the changes in the design, was it very easy to talk about making those changes? Or like, did it, let's say, cost extra? Like, how did that go? Was it, just how did that go?
Yeah, good question. When we brought it up, like we had a few other changes as well. And yeah, they weren't, too crazy. Weren't changing anything too crazy. So, but the builder was open to it. But yeah, we did have to pay extra if in case like, we just had to if it required more materials but we didn't really have to pay for a change order fee or anything like that because we did it early enough in the process. But because it did require just a bit more labor or materials, we had to cover that. Because otherwise, I should say that this whole project was just like a fixed cost. Like for the building and the land, we set that price, this particular one, when in the fall of 2019. And so like this one worked out really well because then prices a year later went up like $100,000.
Yeah.
It hit all that but it was like it was fixed price for us. We didn't have to worry about inflation or materials costing more because of supply chain issues. Like that was gonna have to be the builders. So
So how was, for example, the timing?
It was like they worked with us, made the changes, and actually some of those changes now we also, the second floors actually had a balcony, but there weren't any stairs coming down from the balcony, and so we wanted to make sure that the people could get down from the balcony and into the garage, so we added those stairs. And so some changes like that the builder actually incorporated into their master plans. And just are doing it, or they're like offering these features that as an option for other investors now.
Oh, that's awesome. And what about and so how is the planning process of it? Because like you said, like really that you already had the developer and they had already the plans. So besides that, making the changes, asking for these changes, were there any things that you had to take care of during the process?
Not really. Like we signed off on the drawings and like any changes that were made after we signed the contract. But for the most part, we weren't as involved in the actual build as if you were the builder. Like we didn't have to take care of the zoning or, getting the inspections done or permits and all that. Like that was all taken care of by the builder.
Mhm.
And so we were mostly just yeah, kind of keeping an eye on the build. We did like do our like there's usually a walkthrough that happens right before drywall, and so we made sure to do that and bring up any like issues that we found. So it's more like kind of keeping an eye on your project, but
Mhm. But
um,
not so in depth that you have to like you're just doing, what is normal. I guess is that normal for a new build? You go in and do these inspections. I think you do that, right? I've never actually bought a new build.
yeah, it's so if it's yeah if you're buying like just a pre-construction regular home, then yeah, it's typical that it was just as involved as that. You do have a walkthrough at least a couple times during the build, like once before drywall and then usually right before possession. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice. And okay, and then so you said that this is the upstairs was a three bedroom, right? Three bedroom, two bath,
Yeah, two and
two
a half.
bathroom, two and a half bath. And then downstairs was a one bedroom, one bathroom, I guess, right?
Yeah.
With a crawl space. And and so basically once it closed, like there was nothing then did you do any other changes? Like did you do painting or anything? Or are you just like ready to go on the market completely and just find tenants?
Yeah. Well, yeah, there was I guess most of our work was on the kind of more of the landlord side of it. Like we had to make sure to get financing and to get it tenanted, and those were where like more challenges were. Like kind of the builder took care of the build, kept an eye on it, but for the most part that went pretty smoothly. Like I would say like the biggest challenge in this whole process was the financing. um,
Okay.
and so that's kind of the part that that we had to do. And initially it wasn't like our plan for this was, like I said, like we were tapped out on the residential mortgages, so we wanted to get commercial and we wanted to get CMHC financing.
Mhm.
And typically like this was back in like we signed the contract in end of 2019, so getting into like basically beginning of 2020, um, that's when like COVID hit, and we were just about to apply for our CMHC financing. And so the plan was to, like, we knew the CMHC takes a while, but unfortunately, because like COVID hit right in the middle of that whole process, their timelines really got delayed. So they just got busy, and so timelines like doubled. Um, so and in the end, we weren't able to get it in time. So we ended up having to get like just regular conventional financing, um, like
So
just
you couldn't get CMHC. You couldn't get the CMHC, you're
we just
saying?
couldn't, like we were in the line to get it, and then they had like I think they had picked up our file, but they had and they don't really care that you have a closing date. They take time, however long it takes. They don't care. So and they were just really backed up. So yeah, so when we were at the point where we knew like, okay, there's not going to be enough time, because CMHC looks at the file, um, they kind of approve your file, you get a certificate of insurance, and then you have to take that to a lender. So then that takes time too. So we knew at a certain point that this is not going to happen in time. And so then we had to look at other options. And that's when we worked with our mortgage broker and found just a short term, like a conventional commercial loan. So more like a bridge loan. But luckily it was like had pretty good terms, because that lender in particularly knew that we're going to be refinancing with CMHC later. And so we actually stuck with them in the end. So we got a pretty good term. And then so we closed with them. And then we had to, and then as soon as you close, like it's not a purchase loan anymore with CMHC, now it's a refinance. So then it almost like got into the refinance lineup. And so it was like 5-6 months later that we actually refinanced with CMHC.
Oh, so that's good. So you're at least able to get it done. So let's talk a little bit about CMHC because I don't know if many people even like know what it is, why you used it, like what's your reasoning behind wanting to use it. So you just want to like elaborate more on that kind of stuff?
Okay. Yeah, for sure. So like CMHC is the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Incorporation, like a federal organization. And so their mandate is to help, with affordable housing in Canada. So, they're really kind of incentivize multifamily because they want people to be buying it so that we can increase the supply in Canada, right? And so like, actually we can go into that later, but like they even changed their rules lately to make it even incentivize it even more. But back then it was just kind of the regular program. They did have an affordability program back then, but we didn't go for that. We were just going with the regular CMHC program. And so like what happens is they end up, they insure the lender. And so because the lender is insured, like, so if you were to default, like they're kind of taken care of. And because of that, the lenders feel more secure and they're able to give you better financing terms and interest rate. So when you go with that CMHC route with insurance, you can get a lot better interest rate, like really close to what like residential rates are. Like we ended up with a 1.87, I believe, 1.89. And then you can get up to 85% loan to value. And you can get, with new builds, 40-year amortization. If it's not a new build, it's 35 years. But 40-year amortization, that's like you can't get a rental property in residential and get 40 years. So, and what is like really reduces your mortgage payment, and so it increases your cash flow.
Mm-hmm. And I believe for these ones, this type of CMHC, it's 5+ units, right? So you have to have 5+ units to be able to take advantage of this type of CMHC.
Exactly. So yeah, CMHC plays a different role when it's on the residential side versus the commercial side. So I'm talking about when you have 5 or more units. Yeah. Mm-hmm. On the residential side, that's more like, there's different rules. That's more for helping, people get into housing. And not have, like, you can have less than 20% down.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So I think it's good because I don't think a lot of people know that you can use CMHC, let's say for multi-units, and they do. And like you said, they've actually done even a lot better now. They've made some changes that help investors even more now with the multi-units. So that'll be super interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. Like the regular kind of rules haven't really changed, but it's like the affordability program that's changed. And in some areas it's going to be harder to qualify, but in some areas it's going to be easier. Like, so where it's already affordable, like in Edmonton and Calgary, it's going to be easier to qualify. And it's just going to make it harder in Toronto and Ontario.
Yeah, I don't think any of those rules really will still be able to work in the GTA at all.
It'll be interesting to see how it all plays out. And like, it's still very new. And I think everyone's expecting a little bit more information in the coming weeks about that. So, things might change. But yeah.
100%.
But it's great for like long-term buy and hold, which was the whole strategy with this, I should say. It's just, it's a brand new build. We're just going to hold it for like at least 10 years. And so and when you put CMHC financing in place, you do have to pay a premium. And it depends on the other terms, but so typically it's not necessarily worth it just to, just get a 5-year term and then refinance again, because you're gonna have to pay that premium again. So it's good once you, like, if it was in an older property, it's good to, like, if it was an add value, you'd want to improve the property, get the rents up, and then place this like long-term CMHC financing on the building. Yeah.
So that means what term did you do for your mortgage then with CMHC?
Sorry, which terms?
Yeah, like how long? Because you said you want to do it as long as you possibly can, I guess.
Yeah. Right? Yeah. So for CMHC commercial, it's usually you get a 5-year term or a 10-year term, and it's a fixed interest rate. I don't really think there's an option to go variable. So, which is nice in this environment. Like our 1.9 is going to be fixed for 5 years.
It's amazing.
Yeah. And then if you go longer, like I think the interest rate will be a little slightly higher. And then, yeah, but you're insured for the entire amortization period. So the 40 years you're insured. And so if you just keep renewing your mortgage with the same lender, like you don't have to reapply or anything. You just have to renew for another term. Yeah.
Okay. But you said there's like some extra fees in renewing, and that's about it. But you don't have to worry about it.
I guess I haven't gone through a renewal process. I'm not 100% if they're sure if there's. I'm sure that there probably are some fees, but not as high as if you were to refinance. When you refinance, it's like a completely new mortgage application. You're basically starting fresh. So then you're paying the premium all over again, and so that's it's a lot more expensive to do that. When you're just renewing, there might be a fee, but it's not going to be too much, I don't think.
Oh, okay, I see what you're getting at. Yeah, it makes sense. That's true. Yes.
Yeah.
And so what about, let's say, with your finding money partners and things like that? How was putting the deal together?
Okay, yeah, that was a process too. So we yeah, initially the plan was to have like capital investors as part of our deal. And yeah, we started raising capital from the beginning of the project. And we ended up having some investors on board. But then when you're kind of in the financing application process, which was a long thing, like you don't really want to be bringing in more investors and changing, like we did in a corporate structure. So all of our investors were shareholders, and you don't want to be changing the whole corporate structure while you're like applying for financing. So we kind of we had the investor that we had at the beginning, but then we didn't really bring anybody in. But what we made sure to do was to structure our company in a way that it would be easy to bring people in afterwards. So basically we could sell shares in our company after we took possession. And after the financing was in place. So that's what we did. We basically ended up closing with most of our own money, and then we brought in more investors afterwards. And it was like not like the super smooth process like this. Like you still have to make sure that you have to get approval from the lender. But typically if your investors don't have like more than like definitely more than 20%, less than 20% ownership, then they're not really concerned about like those changes. So yeah, so yeah, we were able to bring them in afterwards, and yeah, it's been good.
Well, that's good. So you guys closed with one other partner first, and then once you closed, then is when you actually went forward to finding your money partners, just to make it easier for, I guess, for people not being jumping in and out, or like changes happening in the
Yeah,
corporation.
changes happening in the corporation while like our mortgage application was in the works, and yeah, because that would have delayed things even more.
Yeah, 100%.
So, and it was like, and our investors also liked coming in afterwards as well, because they could see like, okay, now we've closed. You can see exactly what financing we had in place. Like we had it fully tenanted before possession, and so yeah, like our investors liked that part of it, that they could just see what the actual numbers were, and there was no unknowns really at that time. So then it was much easier to just come into the project, and then we took our money out.
And so because this was a 2 year, it took about 2 years, like a year and a half, I guess, to be built, right? From when you offered, or I guess put the purchase agreement, to once you started getting tenants in. Is that how long it was?
Actually, it was about 13 months, like
Oh, 13 months.
a year. Yeah.
And did you guys, is it normal like a pre-construction where you had to do like the small payment amounts every so often? Or how did that work?
In this case, we had to give a 10% deposit down. So typically you put like a refundable like hold on the lot, which is like just like $1,000 per lot. And then you have about a month to kind of do your due diligence, like and make sure that you'll be able to get financing. And so basically a month to remove conditions, and then at that point they require a 10% deposit. So just that, and that's until the end, until you take possession, then you pay the rest.
Oh, okay, that's awesome. And so then you had then basically like a year to have to find, although I think you still ended up did you like even though before you after closing, did you kind of already have an idea before closing who your people were, or did you also just wait to look for your JV partners after you closed?
It was a bit of both. I guess we were already like in talks with different investors, and some, yeah, part of it was that we didn't want to bring people in like during the financing portion, and others just wanted to wait until after we closed to just see how it all worked out, because this was the first one that we had done like this. So yeah, but then after it closed, so then that's part of the reason we brought them in afterwards. So yeah.
And when you put the offer in, did you already have in mind that you were going to bring in money partners, or was this like an after that you're because like you said, you already had the money for it, so you could have technically just kept it for yourselves. But
Mm-hmm.
did you, so was the intention always from the beginning to actually bring in partners, or is something that you just kind of learned on the way and was like, oh, let's try this out and bring in partners?
And no, it was our intention from the beginning, because that's what we had done with all our properties beforehand. Like we bought our very first rental properties on our own, and then we did about 5 joint ventures after that, or 7, and then so we had a total of 7 doors, all with joint venture partners. So that was kind of our process. So yeah, the plan was to always from the beginning to partner with others. Um, and yeah, but it worked. But it's always good if you were doing this to, like, even though that's your plan, like you do want to have a backup plan that like
Hmm.
you want to make sure that you can still close, especially like after you remove conditions, you want to make sure that you have a plan. um, and like
100%.
and we did take a bit of a risk. I'll say, like, when you're doing this with commercial financing, it's not like residential where you can get your financing approved and then you go and remove conditions. Like we definitely like talked to our mortgage broker. Like we were confident that we would be able to get financing. Um, but we didn't have like an approval from a lender yet. So but we went ahead, we removed conditions, and we knew that we would be able to figure it out. Like we knew what it took to get commercial financing. Like you need a certain net worth, and you need like your corporate structure and all that. So we did that properly. We were working with the right mortgage broker, and then on the commercial side, you can usually always get financing. It's just at what rate. So we weren't really too worried about it. Yeah.
But is it like, but was the reason that you like remove conditions without getting the financing, was it just because it takes a lot longer and you wanted to remove the conditions, or what made you guys decide it in this way?
Like the lender it's just not common for, you can't just there's no like pre-approval process. Like you can't get
Oh,
approved. So yeah, it's just not common for like a year in advance to get approval on a project that's not
that's
even
true.
yet. Um,
That's true. That's true. Yeah, actually, that's true. Yeah, that's very true.
it's like, but we did do another one afterwards where we actually got 3 residential mortgages. So I've been through it on that side as well. And that was actually so much less stressful, because we got the pre-approvals ahead of time. And so, yeah, we just, really easily removed conditions because we knew we had those approvals. But yeah, but yeah, it was like we're doing the exact same thing with an 8plex right now, where we remove conditions without actually, but we had like a comfort letter from the lender or from our mortgage broker, kind of like they had analyzed our portfolio and our net worth and our assets, and they were comfortable enough to tell us that, yeah, that we can get financing for you. Like we don't actually have a lender for you yet, but we know we'll find one.
Hmm.
There's
Yeah, which is almost like a pre-approval anyways, because actually even on residential, even these pre-approvals, they could technically not close, they'll do the pre-approval and they could actually not close if, right? Because if something even changes in your portfolio and they notice it, maybe like, especially, I don't know about commercial, probably not, because again, it's more about the income of the property, which is nice. But on
yeah.
the residential side, like if you're changing, especially if you're like a real estate investor, that you're like buying a lot of properties, you make a lot of changes, they will find out and they take that mortgage away very quickly. The pre-approval at that time doesn't even matter anymore.
Yeah. Indeed, yeah. Like they could still come and check that you still have that job, you're still making that income, and yeah, your situation hasn't
Oh,
changed.
you didn't add that extra house? Because that's like I've seen that's what happened to people. One person bought like in the span of 3 months, they had bought like four houses
Yeah.
and they only thought it was just one. And then they checked all of a sudden all these like houses were being bought and because it's also banks even just have a certain, well, again, this is bank, right? The bank only allowed, I think, six houses and then they were already at 10. And they're like, well, we did the pre-approval with the assumption that you only had six, and now, what happened? So
Yeah.
then it got canceled, and they had to go find other funding.
Yeah. Yeah, that can happen. Yeah. So yeah, so you're good if you don't like change your situation, but if you do, then yeah, you gotta keep that in mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like that, I think that's the good side of the commercial, right? Because it's really about the asset itself.
Yeah. It's a lot more
So you
about the
don't have to worry about the changes that go on.
yeah. But at the same time, like so yeah, it's a bit different. Like they look at the asset, the appraisal that you have done, like a commercial appraisal, they'll like take that more into account. Um, but yeah, you got to be careful for things like, if the appraisal just assumes what rent you're going to get, and if you don't actually get that rent, then like the value actually won't be as high, and that'll affect your lending. So like we're kind of in that situation right now. We have to make sure we get a certain amount for rent, like a minimum, so that the value is still there. Yeah.
And so actually then in pre-construction, does it kind of help you? Because like you said, before you actually close, you had your tenants in. So that kind of also helps you kind of reaffirm what income you're going to actually have in that property.
Yeah, and the lenders really like that. And so that's another kind of story with that. So before, when we thought we were going to just get CMHC from the beginning, one of the requirements is that you have it fully tenanted before they fund the money. So like we worked really hard to get those properties tenanted, so we'd have those leases in place, so that we could get the funds. And so in the end, it was like, even though it wasn't as required by other lenders, it was good that we had that in place because it did help us find that kind of last minute financing, because it shows, what income is going to be coming in. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, but yes, yeah, that's a pretty big requirement. And so, yeah, that's another kind of risk you take if that's your only plan to get CMHC financing. You got to get those
Yeah,
tenants.
that's a good point. Because then, I mean, which it kind of works out. Because I feel like normally in pre-construction, don't you usually get possession before you're actually, like you actually close on it? There's always like delays and stuff. At least I feel like here, there's always people that they're actually able to get into the house and they haven't even closed on it yet. So I feel like is that very normal over there too?
Um, it's not as common. Like typically you don't close until you get an occupancy permit, and unless like you don't really usually take possession before you close. Yeah, it kind of happens at the same time.
No, but what I mean is, yeah, I guess is the wrong way of saying it is does that like, but they let you have access to the house, like, yeah, because I know in even actually apartment buildings here, there's people that sometimes will be living there and they do like they're renting for a while until they can actually purchase it.
In the new
Is that,
builds?
yeah, in the new builds.
Okay. Um, yeah, no, in this case, about 30 days before possession, it's pretty common for the builder to give you like a possession letter, and that tells you like that, okay, we're like basically guaranteeing that you're going to get possession on this day. And so it's not like, and yeah, so up until that letter, so sometimes 30, sometimes like 45 days before you can get that. And that's when you'll have more confidence that the build is to be done by that time, and you can start advertising and doing showings for tenants and signing leases. But yeah, you don't really want to do that before that because things could change.
Mhm. Oh, okay, so in that window of once you got that letter that you're receiving possession, that's when you started trying to find tenants.
Yeah, it was really just in the last month that we signed all the leases, and because that's typically when tenants are looking anyways. And so,
Exactly,
but
true.
And like we just used all advertising possible, like all the platforms. We made signs, and we also all had offered incentives too, because so it was like we were willing to like give away like a half month free rent, because like better that than just to not get the thing funded, right?
Yeah, 100%. And but then so it ended up being then that the CMHC, the delays with CMHC actually benefited you to be able to just make sure everything was in place to be able to um, get CMHC like to fund it fully.
Yeah, yeah, it actually did was good in the end, because they were now like we basically had all the tenants in there. We weren't in that month where we gave a few incentives that first month, but we were kind of having consistent income for a few months. And so they liked that, and so we could show that. And so that helped with, I guess, with the refinance with CMHC.
Since you had to refinance, actually, but in your refinance, did you actually go through the appraisal process, or was it was just with the purchase price? Because I know you said that within those 2 years it increased a lot. Were you then able to take advantage of that increase, or they still went with the purchase price?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah. Because so typically when you go with a refinance, and usually I think it's under like 24 units now, like they'll more look at the appraised value rather than the purchase.
Purchase?
But in this case, since it was so close to the purchase, then they ended up only giving us 85% of the purchase price, even though
Yeah.
the appraised value was higher.
Mhm. Yeah, that makes sense. Usually a lot of banks won't do it. I don't know that much on the commercial side, but I know on the residential side, like I think 6 months is usually the closest you can do, and usually it's if you want an A lender, it's like waiting a year to be able to actually do the refinance and take advantage after purchase.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it would have to have been a bit further out. So
Mhm.
yeah, I think, and since they knew what the purchase price was, yeah, they're usually a little bit more conservative when you go with CMHC. They do their own underwriting, and will give you 85% of what value they determine it to be. Not, it doesn't matter what you bought it for. But in our
Yeah, that's true too.
um, the value that they determined was higher than the purchase price, but then they just went with the lower of the two.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And so let's go through some numbers. So what did you buy this for? Was it four or three? I forget. Three townhouses? Four
Like,
townhouses?
yeah, like you can three suited townhouses.
Three townhouses.
Yeah, so they worked out to about like 450,000 per unit. So it was a total of like 1.35 million.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, when our appraisal came in, like after our actual leases were signed and they could use the actual income, then it was appraised at 1.45. So it was $100,000 more.
Oh, it's amazing. And um, and so did you have any you probably didn't have any holding costs then, really, at all, right? There's probably no holding costs.
Oh, during the construction?
Yeah, or yeah, just during the whole process, or any extra expenses other than closing costs?
Yeah, during the construction, there's no holding costs. The only like it's just I guess opportunity costs. Like your that 10% deposit is basically sitting for a year,
Hmm.
not making any interest. So that's the only cost. But besides that, no, there's just closing costs. And with commercial, there are a lot higher closing costs. So you got to know that going into it. Because you end up having to pay, like if you're using a mortgage broker, you actually pay the mortgage broker fees, and you pay your legal costs as well as the lender's legal costs. So like your legal is at least double. And then yeah, to get a commercial appraisal is like a lot higher than a residential. Sometimes they'll
How
also,
much is a commercial appraisal?
how much?
Yeah, how much is a commercial appraisal
Um,
usually?
it could be anywhere from like $2,000 to $3,000.
Oh wow, yeah,
It
this
really
makes a
doesn't
big difference.
change too much depending on like the size of your property. So like it's that's the downside of getting a smaller property. Like it's still the same cost for the appraisal. If you got a 20 unit, it wouldn't be that much more. So, yeah. And then sometimes the, like on our one, there's also like the lender might want an environmental site assessment. So that's another couple $1,000, 3,000 or so. So yeah, there's just more upfront costs, but in the end, like we did the math and just realized that like because we in the end would only have to put 15% down and get a 40-year amortization, like we knew the cash flow would be so much better and it would just be worth it in the long run. That in the end our ROI is just a much higher than getting like residential mortgages or yeah, even with those extra closing costs.
So how much would you say, how much were your closing costs altogether?
I have it right here. The total closing costs. Closing costs were about $20,000.
$20,000, and then once you closed, how much were, or what were even the expenses that you, pardon?
No, actually 50,000.
Oh, 50,000. Oh,
yeah.
wow. And that was, you guys don't have land transfer fees over there, right? Or do you?
No, we don't have land transfer fees, so that helps.
Else you would have been at like 100,000.
Because yeah, we actually got like a builder credit, so that helped. And then, but yeah, in the end, I'm not like looking at the right thing, but yeah, it was about
50,000 for your closing costs.
Yeah.
And so how much, so what expense, so did the tenants take care of the utilities? Like, do they have split metering, or you took care of everything?
Yeah, and they were built that they're not completely split up and down. So yeah, we just have a flat fee for utilities. And so we actually make a little bit of money off of that. Unless utility prices keep going up, then we'll have to like relook at what we're charging as a flat fee. But yeah, so.
And so, okay, so you pay your expenses, and someone just made a comment. Actually, you will have to pay HST, right? At the end of the year or you had to pay HST. Do you pay? Oh, does that 50K include HST? I guess.
Well, in Alberta, we don't have
Yeah.
It's just 5% GST. So yeah, on new builds, you do have to pay a 5% GST on the whole building. So, but that was kind of incorporated into the purchase price. So when I say 1.35 million, like that was included. And like and then like you do get GST rebates for new builds, but once you get like to 150,000 or more, like you don't really get a rebate. Like I think we were just under 150, so we got a tiny rebate, but not much. Yeah.
And I forget. Do you do do you pay the HST, or sorry, GST? You pay the GST on closing, or is that like a year afterwards?
It was on part of.
Pardon? Sorry.
It was part of the purchase price, like it included, so we pay it on closing.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Yeah.
And okay, so you guys are taking care of all the utilities. Any maintenance fees that you have to also take care of? Or these are freehold townhouses?
Yeah, like they're freehold. So yeah, there's no condo fees. We just and so they're kind of, as far as like property management, they're a lot more like residential. And the tenants are responsible for taking care of the lawn and the snow removal. So yeah, and that's what we liked about it too. We could just use the same property managers that we used for our residential properties. So it's a good, easy step into multifamily.
Yeah. So altogether, I guess all your monthly expenses, like what were your monthly expenses coming out to?
Like once it's up and running.
Yeah, once like it's yeah, up and running. What were your monthly expenses after closing and you had your tenants in?
Yeah. So
And
like
averaging obviously, because it obviously does change, I'm sure.
yeah. Yeah, I actually see I did a whole presentation on it. And so like I'll talk about like after we refinanced because it was, our mortgage payments were a little bit higher when we had the bridge loan. But then after we refinanced, our mortgage payment dropped by a lot. Like it went from about 5,000 to 3,400.
Mm.
So that really increased our cash flow.
Hmm.
But in the end, the income coming in is about $10,000 a month, and then our expenses are around 7,700. So we're cash flowing on average 2,300 a month.
Hmm.
So if you kind of
And so even with actually the mortgage being higher for a few months, a couple months, or however long it was, then you probably were what, like about break even or making a little cash flow, or were you having those few months having to put some money into it?
no, we were still cash flowing.
Hmm.
Um, and then yeah, it was like really up and down. And what helped also is that we didn't have to pay like property taxes for a few months, and also for actually because we paid some at closing, and then the first 6 months of the new year, the property hadn't been reassessed, so we were just paying taxes as if it was just worth just the land value. So that helps with cash flow at the beginning, but then after it got reassessed halfway through the year, then our property taxes like really jumped because we had to make up for it. Um, but yeah, that did help with cash flow at the beginning. But yeah, we still were fine, and we planned to have a reserve fund from the beginning as well, so that helped. But yeah, in the end, yeah. But once that mortgage payment dropped, um, yeah, it really helped.
Yeah, you definitely started seeing the benefits of it, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, this is a great project and something new to hear about that at least I don't know, I had never heard people doing things like this. So it's really nice to hear about your opportunity and it sounds like and I mean I know that you is this something you're going to continue? I know you've done other ones, but you will you continually continue doing these ones? Is this something you're going to stick with? Or are you still looking into other types of multi-units?
We're kind of looking at all opportunities right now. Like I would say it's like just personally, we want to diversify a bit. So we're gonna like once we take our properties this year, we have 20 units. So we just want to diversify a bit, but it's not because it's not a good product. Um, so yeah, we're gonna so that we are looking at kind of the older projects too for other reasons too. Like there's just pros and cons to doing new build versus old, and that's a whole other conversation. But
Yeah.
so yeah, we're gonna try, do some other types of projects. But it really, kind of. But if a really good opportunity comes to do another new build, then we might do it because it's kind of a lot easier at this point. It's just a repeat of the same process.
Because you do have another new build, right? That you've done or are in the process of doing it, or is this your one and only one you've done so far?
Yeah, no, we have that one, which has been in operation now for a year, just over a year. Um, and so then we have three other ones that are under construction. So an
Mm.
eightplex that's closing in a few weeks, and then another sixplex that's closing in June, and then another one and closing in July.
Oh wow, awesome.
Yeah.
That's exciting and it's nice. And it's true. I guess you've done so many, also probably time to go and try something new too, right?
Yeah. It's like, yeah, we're just thinking of doing just a slightly different strategy, different structure. Because yeah, these are really great for like a long-term hold.
Mhm.
Really good way to build equity.
And I
Really
think
good returns for the investors.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think it's also nice for people like and in between, right? If you're not a developer or you know anything about it, it's kind of like a nice in between part to be in it. So at least you get to kind of semi get to see a little bit of how it works without having to deal with the stresses of the actual development stuff.
Yeah, you're not involved with the development of the land or the build and hiring the contractors and all that. So, but you can still get to be involved in the process and yeah, and have to do other things at the same time. It's just not all consuming.
And that's true too, yeah. Yeah, thanks so much for coming on. It was so nice to have you on and hear about your new development. And hopefully we have you on again because it was
Yeah,
fun to chat with you.
yeah, thanks. Yeah, the time went by really fast. So I'm really,
I know you think like an hour is like nothing and it's just like done.
yeah. So yeah, this is yeah helpful for people watching, and yeah, I would be happy to come back again and talk about another project.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Hope everyone enjoyed it and we'll see you in the next episode. Bye, Zorya. Bye, everyone.
Bye.